2026 Miami Grand Prix race notes. Dick's race notes. Number 1. First of all, I thought the race had some highly entertaining moments. I have been a pretty harsh critic of the new regulations. I still am. But the revisions that have been made to the regulations, along with the more competitive entries from Ferrari, Red Bull, and McLaren, added to the fun and intrigue of the race. Number 2. Charles Leclerc made a brilliant start to jump into the lead after another poor start from both Kimi Antonelli and Max Verstappen. And then, of course, Max got things a bit sideways on the first lap and then spun 360 degrees and somehow was not hit by a fellow competitor, and he didn't hit the wall. Max continued on in a sort of like 15th place and then drove up through the field to 5th and won the drive of the day, which he certainly deserved. Number 3. Kimi eventually worked his way into the lead and, once he was in clean air, drove a beautiful race despite having some worries about his gearbox, especially with the downshifts. But he drove around the problem and basically held Lando Norris at bay for roughly the last half of the race. Number 4. The new updates on the Ferrari, Red Bull, and McLaren clearly worked, with Ferrari bringing the biggest upgrade package in terms of the number of bits that have been upgraded. The Ferrari is still pretty tough on tires, and this was evidenced by Charles just losing the car at the end of the race and falling out of third because he spun on the last lap, clouded a wall, and damaged his car and falling to 8th place. Mercedes will respond to these upgrades from their competitors with an upgrade package of their own in Canada. Number 5. Red Bull has now given Max and Isaac a car they can fight with, or at least Max can fight with, for the first time this year. Max looked to have a significant advantage over Isaac, and I truly hope the second car driver curse at Red Bull has not begun again. Number 6. Franco Colapinto had a brilliant weekend at Miami, qualifying and racing well to 7th place. Alpine looks like a team that has cleared the midfield runners by some margin, although the Williams, which has shed a few kilograms of weight, certainly look to be a bit more competitive. And number 7. So George Russell is on the back foot at the moment, but I fully expect him to rebound at the race in Canada, as the circuit very much suits George. Look for a stronger McLaren and Red Bull, and Ferrari should provide some fireworks until their tires start to degrade. Miami is a circuit that provides plenty of opportunities to harvest energy, while Montreal is not a great track for harvesting energy, so be prepared for a lot of Mario Kart-like racing. Sabrina's race notes. Number 1. Kimi Antonelli. 3 wins and now something more. 3 wins in a row, 3 consecutive poles, and this one, unlike China, where he had the pace to control the race, or Japan, where the safety car handed him an advantage, had to be earned under real, sustained pressure from the reigning world champion behind him. That is what makes Miami meaningful. Lando was genuinely quick, pushing Kimi every lap of the second stint, at times close enough to use the boost mode. Kimi had car issues, gearbox problems mid-race, overheating tires, and he did not unravel. He managed it. He absorbed it. He won it. This was also the first time Kimi had to win with a world champion on his gearbox for an extended period of time. He passed that test. And I think if and when Mercedes sorts out its start procedure, because the starts continue to be a problem, not of his making, what we are seeing right now will look even more remarkable in hindsight. What I keep coming back to is how Kimi, is being handled. Toto has been deliberate about moving away from hard pressure management with Kimi, and the results are speaking for themselves. The contrast with how other young drivers have been treated in this sport remains significant to me. Kimi is making the case, race by race, that how you manage a young driver directly affects what you get from them. Number 2, George Russell, a track that does not suit him. I want to be direct about something before drawing any conclusions. Miami is a circuit George Russell has historically struggled with. He acknowledged it himself. Kimi was on pole last year, and he was P5. This weekend, Kimi was on pole, and he is P4. Those are his words. He finds low grip, high temperature conditions genuinely difficult to adapt to, which puts him behind teammates who are more comfortable in that environment. So I am being careful not to read too much into the gap between him and Kimi this weekend. That said, the gap was real. Fourth place in a car capable of winning the race is not where he wants to be. He was 4/10 off Kimi in quali, and by his own admission was experimenting with driving styles in the closing laps trying to unlock something. Canada, which is a circuit he likes, will tell us far more. What I do not want to see is the pattern that cost Oscar the championship last year, accepting that certain tracks are simply not going to work and moving on. There are more low grip circuits ahead. George has to find answers. Number 3, McLaren, properly back with caveats. McLaren has done it again. They brought a major upgrade to Miami. Andrea Stella described it as almost an entirely new car, and it delivered. Lando took sprint pole, won the sprint, was genuinely fighting for the race win, and Oscar finished third, their best result of 2026 by a significant margin. What is striking to me is that this is a pattern. 3 years ago in Miami, McLaren brought their first meaningful upgrade to a car that had looked hopeless, and it changed the trajectory of their season. The team knows how to develop, and they know how to deploy. That is a genuine competitive strength. That said, Lando is right to be frustrated. McLaren had the win. He led it. They got undercut because they did not pull the trigger first. Stella was honest about it. Execution, adaptation, optimization. I concur with the diplomatic optimism around this team. Mercedes is expected to respond in Canada with their own upgrade. This is shaping up to be a real development race between these two teams, and I think McLaren is up for it. And Oscar, I think he is going to be a contender. His late charge to pass Verstappen and then Leclerc for third was measured and decisive. He is still adapting to how these regulations ask him to race differently, and he is doing it. Number 4, the 2026 regulations. A step, not a solution. The rule tweaks introduced in Miami, lowering the harvesting time in quali, adjusting the super clipping, helped. Drivers acknowledged it, but helped is not the same as fixed, and I think it is important not to conflate the two. Oscar was candid. The qualifying changes made a difference, but the races are basically the same. The closing speed differentials that contributed to the safety concerns raised in Japan have not been fully resolved. Lando said that if you push flat out everywhere, you still get penalized for it, and you should never get penalized for going fast. Charles offered the most realistic framing. Some of these problems are structural to the regulations and may not be fully solvable. I also think it is worth noting that Miami is an energy-rich circuit. Braking zones are long, which makes harvesting easier. The rules changes may appear to be working better here than they actually will on other tracks. Barcelona, which was a preseason testing venue, gives teams real comparison data, which will be a much better indicator. What I keep sitting with is the question of driver engagement. If drivers are not genuinely enjoying what they are doing, and the chorus of voices expressing that is growing, that matters. Drivers' enthusiasm and belief in the product pours over into us as fans. We can sense when they are engaged and when they are managed. When Lance Stroll says he tested F3 cars over the break and found them more fun to drive, that is a pointed statement. When Lando says F1 is not at the level it should be, that is pointed too. I want to be fair. Some of those voices come from drivers whose teams are struggling with these regulations and who have an interest in change. I am holding Max's criticism in that context alongside the sincerity of it. But Lando is the reigning champion, and his car is now near the front. His criticism still stands. Where I land after Miami, the tweaks moved in the right direction. I remain open and skeptical, both things at once. Number 5. Drivers and the regulation process, a structural problem. Something that came through early in the Miami press conference is that the drivers feel meaningfully excluded from the decisions that most affect them. Lewis raised it directly. Oscar's response when asked his favorite and least favorite things about the new era was revealing. He spent several seconds visibly calculating what he could say, and then admitted he was struggling to name something he genuinely enjoys about the new rules. By and large, drivers are outside the room when regulatory reform happens. Their interests have to be advocated by their teams, and outside of shared concerns like safety, I'm not sure teams are consistently the best advocates for what drivers actually need. Where a team and drivers' interests diverge, the team interests are likely to prevail. Verstappen acknowledged this. He said he hopes future drivers have more direct input to the organizers. I wholeheartedly agree. Drivers have a real understanding of what makes Formula One a good product. That knowledge should have a formal seat at the table, not an informal one filtered through team principles. Oscar's comment about driving a 2008 era McLaren in a demonstration over the weekend and what it captured that the current cars have lost resonated with me. That is not a manufacturer agenda speaking. That is a driver who loves racing telling you what he misses. Number 6. The V8 announcement, right idea, complicated timing. The FIA president announced that V8s will be returning in 2031 and potentially 2030 with sufficient support. In principle, something I think is a good idea. Better sound, less complexity, and move towards sustainable fuels rather than an ever deeper hybrid commitment. For the long term, it points in the right direction. But I am questioning the timing. Right now, the focus should be on reforming the current regulations to encourage better racing, protect drivers, and support the sport's commercial momentum. I also continue to wonder how much the continued trajectory toward 50-50 hybrid distinguishes Formula One from Formula E in any meaningful way. I would rather see the focus on sustainable fuels than on electrification for its own sake. A governance question I keep returning to. Should manufacturers really have this much influence over the regulatory direction of the sport? The current rules were shaped significantly by manufacturers who came in, influenced the regulation to favor their hybrid expertise, and now struggling to deliver on it. That cycle is worth examining. Toto Wolff's read on the V8, that Mercedes is open to it and understands the need to balance combustion with some electrical element to stay relevant, strikes me as a team that has stayed with the sport long enough to think about its health, not just its competitive position. Fred Vasseur's framing was also correct. Reducing the budget of the engine is the parameter that has come first. That benefits everyone. Number 7. Red Bull and Max Verstappen, light at the end of the tunnel. Red Bull brought a substantial upgrade package to Miami, revised side pods, their own version of the active wing, and the car came back together in a way that Max had not felt since before the season started. His word, he had felt like a total passenger. Now he felt in control again. A comfortable Max is a different competitor. The spin at the start was uncharacteristic. I found myself wondering why, and I do not have a clear answer. But his recovery from 10th to 5th, including his stint management on aging hards, showed what he is capable of when the car is working. A comfortable Max is also a Max who stays in Formula One. His interest in the sport is not purely competitive. He has said he wants to enjoy the process. If the car keeps moving forward and the regulations keep improving, I think he stays. If not, those conversations about his future become serious. Number 8. Isaac Hadjar, an isolated incident. I hope. I want to say this clearly. I hope Miami was a one-off. The floor disqualification was a team error. 2 millimeters outside tolerance, nothing Isaac did, which put him on the back foot before the race had even begun. Starting from pit lane on hards while everyone else was on mediums is a different race entirely. He made progress from the starting point. He was moving through the field, and then he pushed too hard into the chicane, made contact with the wall, and was done. He was visibly hard on himself. That is a driver who cares, but it cannot happen, especially in a car that now has real pace under it. The pattern that has followed Red Bull's second drivers when the car has a particular character is well documented. Max can handle edge and instability in ways most drivers cannot. When the car is built around that, the teammate can struggle to find a consistent window. I'm not ready to write off Isaac, but I am watching, and I genuinely hope he does not spiral, because what I saw in the first 3 races suggested real potential. Number 9. Ferrari. Beautiful starts, difficult afternoons. Ferrari starts well. That is now established. What has not been solved is how to translate a good start position into a race result. The contrast with Mercedes is almost symmetrical. Mercedes rarely leads at the end of a lap 1, but somehow wins. Ferrari frequently leads lap 1 and somehow does not win. Charles had one of his fastest starts of the season, took the lead, was genuinely there with the front-running cars in the early laps, and then the stop timing put him out of position. He was fighting gravity for the rest of the race, and a final lap spin while chasing Oscar for third ended it. He took full accountability. The spin was his, but the strategy call earlier made everything harder than it needed to be. I am genuinely wondering why this keeps happening. Whether it is communication, trust, timing models, I do not have the answer. But I hope Ferrari is examining the gap between the starts they are delivering and the results they are converting from them. On Lewis, he had a difficult weekend, damaged early by contact with Colapinto on lap 1. He was promoted to 6th after Charles's penalty. His Canada approach needs to be one of reset and positive thinking. The Lewis-Charles dynamic is worth watching as the season develops. Charles is performing well, Lewis is still finding his footing, and the gap between them in the championship will tell us something real over the next few races. Number 10. Charles Leclerc's penalty, a question worth asking. Charles received a 20-second penalty post-race for leaving the track multiple times on the final lap after spinning and damaging his steering. He took full accountability for the spin itself. But the penalty, given that he had a mechanical issue affecting his ability to turn right, feels like a situation worth examining more carefully. Not to excuse the spin, but to understand where the line is between willful track cutting and a damaged car limping to the flag. I believe a similar situation with Lewis occurred last year and question the harshness of this penalty. I acknowledge Charles made the error that created the situation in the first place. Number 11. Lando Norris, hungry again. I was glad to see Lando lead the sprint and win it. Earlier in the season, he felt muted, not quite in the mindset I would have expected from a reigning world champion who knows how to fight. Miami felt different. He was vocal after the race, specific about what McLaren left on the table, honest about the frustration, while still crediting Kimi. That is the Lando I was waiting to see. That hunger matters, and I want to see it carry through to Canada. Number 12. Pierre Gasly and Liam Lawson, circumstances and character. Pierre Gasly's race ended through no fault of his own. Liam Lawson's gearbox failed going into turn 17. He had no brakes, no ability to downshift, and the collision was the result. Liam went and apologized to Pierre directly. That matters. The stewards cleared him completely once the telemetry confirmed the failure. I am glad Pierre walked away unhurt. Pierre had been having a stronger weekend than his finishing position shows. Number 13. Audi, the operational problem beneath the pace. Audi showed some race pace in Miami. Gabby executed a long first stint strategy from a very difficult starting position and recovered to 12th. There is something there in the car, but operationally, Audi continues to struggle in ways that a team with their resources and hybrid background should not. Gabby could not start the sprint due to a disqualification. He could not complete quali because of a brake fire after an emergency rebuild. Nico could not start the sprint because of an engine fire on the way to the grid. Nico is a seasoned driver, and Audi is losing real data and real development time because he cannot get to the finish line consistently. That cost compounds. Number 14. Franco Colapinto and Alpine, the most assured weekend yet. Franco had his best Formula One weekend, full stop. He had the measure of Pierre for most of the race, crossed the line 8th, and was promoted to 7th after Charles's penalty, a career best result. He also received a new monocoque, which brought the car inside the weight limit and made a meaningful difference. The minor contact with Hamilton on lap 1 was a blemish, but beyond that, he was clean, measured, and fast. Alpine's position at the head of the midfield is becoming more established. This weekend felt like a genuine step for Franco as a driver, not just a result that went his way. Number 15. Williams, overdue points and what they mean. Williams finally brought the upgrade that was supposed to come to race 1, and it delivered. Both Carlos and Alex scored points, their first double points finish of 2026. Carlos put it best, getting 2 cars in the points and on merit is a good step, and they need to keep pushing. What I had not fully considered until reading the analysis afterward is that this was not a new development. It was the upgrade they were owed from the start of the season, which tells you something about where they were at Melbourne and about the gap they are working to close. There is still meaningful distance to Alpine in race pace, but this felt like a step in the right direction, and Carlos continues to be exactly what this team needs.